Okay, good morning to our friends from the media. We would like to start our press conference. I am Raymond De Chavez from Tebteba, based in the Philippines. I would like to welcome you to our press conference. This is the press conference of the Indigenous Peoples Global Partnership on Climate Change, Forest, and Sustainable Development. We are composed of 17 indigenous organizations and NGOs from 13 countries in Latin America, Asia, and Africa. And we are doing work related to increasing the capacity of indigenous peoples for adaptation and mitigation, and also for recognition of traditional knowledge and effective participation in climate change negotiations. Today we have here some of our partners from the partnership. We have from Kenya, from Nicaragua, from Indonesia, and from the Philippines. And to start off the press conference, I would like to give the floor to Grace Balawag from Tebteba. Grace, you have the floor.
Hello, good morning, everybody. I represent Tebteba. This is the Indigenous Peoples International Center for Policy Research and Education. As Raymond had mentioned, we have a partnership of indigenous peoples organizations from 13 countries. And basically, in this partnership, we do local groundwork level on climate change adaptation and mitigation work. And at the same time, we link this to our national advocacy work and then also to our global participation in UN processes like the UNFCCC. Basically, I will just briefly inform you about our priorities for this COP and what are the ongoing discussions that we are following through. We have two major concerns that are that we follow up in this COP. Number one is the integration or inclusion of human rights-based approach to climate change actions. So in these discussions, it is under the enhanced the working group on enhanced Durban platform, and under the ADP. Yes, in the preamble, there is mention on human rights and indigenous peoples, but this is not elaborated in the whole text. No single elaboration in relation to indigenous peoples in the full text of the ADP. So we are still following through on the human rights language here, and then to put a specific language on the recognition of indigenous peoples' rights to the lands, territories, and the resources, and at the same time the recognition of our traditional knowledge in relation to climate change adaptation and mitigation. Secondly, there's also confusion in defining the intended national determined contributions, or this is the contributions of the states, wherein they will, the contributions of states in reducing the emissions. So in this case, there is no clear definition on the safeguards in relation to the INDCs. And the third one is in relation to the SOBSTA discussion. Our other concern is the provision of guidance in relation to safeguard information systems in relation to REDD. You know, in REDD Plus, we have already the Cancun safeguards. And in these Cancun safeguards, it is very important for us because this is where the recognition and respect of the rights of indigenous peoples are placed, and the recognition of our traditional knowledge, the full and effective participation of stakeholders, including indigenous peoples, in all the processes of REDD Plus implementation. So in this case, we are very much focused on the discussions or the debates in relation to putting guidance in relation to the safeguards. But it seems this one is very critical, and the debates are still ongoing until today, and we would know the results of this if they will come into agreement on this. But as it was during the discussion yesterday in the negotiations in the contact groups, it seems the guidance for safeguards is not fully in agreement with all of the countries who are negotiating this. So we are looking forward on developments on this today, and we hope there is something that they will be putting on in relation to the guidance on safeguards. I think this is it, and I will pass on to my next colleague.
Thank you, Grace. Thank you for giving us updates on the negotiations. The next speakers will now share with us what the communities, what indigenous communities are doing on the ground, and how this relates to the importance of recognizing indigenous people's rights and issues here in the climate negotiations. And so I would like to give the floor to Mina Susana Setra from Aliansi Masyarakat Adat Nusantara of Indonesia, and would also like to welcome Tarsila Rivera from Peru. Mina?
Thank you very much. My name is Mina Setra. I'm from Indigenous Peoples Alliance of the Archipelago, or AMAN, Indonesia. I think the biggest challenge from this UNFCCC, the COP, is how to make papers into reality. The COP has been going on for several years, many years, but it doesn't really change the situation on the ground. And I think that's the question we have to ask to all of the parties. What are they going to do to implement all the planning, all the agreement that's already there? Many of the agreement is not yet reached the final agreement, but at least there are things that have started. There are bilateral agreement that's already been going on, but it doesn't really change the situation on the ground. And for indigenous peoples, I think for us, this is the most biggest things that we question the governments and the parties. We, in the past few years, for example, in Indonesia, this year, we have 2 indigenous communities who's been evicted from their territories, and has been some of them have been arrested, like in Margadangku in South Sumatra, and then also Banding Agung community in Bengkulu in Sumatra also. They were evicted from their territory because that is national park, and some of them get arrested and then sentenced in jail because they were living in this territory. And this is not the situation that we imagine when we talk about forest protection, for example. When we want to protect and to conserve forest and environment, it doesn't mean that indigenous peoples have to be affected from their territory. It must not something like that happen, because actually indigenous communities are the one who been protecting the territory so far. And so this is I think the biggest challenge for indigenous peoples. Actually, we offer our support to government. We've been asking the government on what do they need us to do. Because actually there are quite many good things on paper related to indigenous peoples, not particularly only in the UNFCCC. There are some good things in the UNFCCC document related to indigenous peoples, but the question is for the governments, for the parties, what do they need from us to support them to implement what is needed to do in the ground? Because actually we try to do our best to support, to help. We've been questions about our existence. Many questions asked from the government and also from private sectors. If there is indigenous peoples, who are they? Where are they living? Where is the territory? And those questions have been thrown to us. And we've been, in the past few years, we've been working, developing our participatory mapping for our territories to prove, to give an evidence about the existence of indigenous communities. And we've been doing this for past 10 years, 20 years. And for Indonesia, for example, end of this year, we already mapped about 7 million hectares of indigenous territories. And we are going to submit this to the government because we want them to understand, to know that there is indigenous peoples and these are their territories. So it's only one thing. But we also can help, we can support governments with the community-based monitoring system, which is in the partnership we have been working on together. Other colleague will explain about that. And also we have our own territorial management system, which is along this time, like conservationists, environmentalists, always talking about when they talk about conservation with different zone and everything. Indigenous peoples have our own traditional management system on these particular things, and we can really contribute. But how these corporations can be built up, can be bridged with the government, I think that's the most important questions. And above that's all also, what is government going to do? What is the party going to do to change the situation on the ground? I think that's the big questions. And we want to see that questions at least has an answer in this COP through different agreement will be taken here. I think that's for me now.
Thank you, Mina. I would now invite our colleague Kimaren Ole Riamit from ILEPA in Kenya.
Thank you very much, Raymond, and welcome to all of us. My name is Kimaren, and I come from Kenya. I work with an organization called Indigenous Livelihoods Enhancement Partners. And it's a pleasure to have this space to put our voice to what is happening here. Firstly, I think we all know now that indigenous peoples all over the world and in Africa, including Africa, are people of the land. Their lives, their cultural identity, their livelihood production systems, their cosmovisions are hinged on land. And as people of the land, their livelihood systems are climate friendly. And so as we sit here, frustrated in the slow pace of these negotiations here in Lima, it is tragic that a people who contribute least to the problem of climate change, who have the lowest carbon footprint, indeed pay a double price for climate change, in the sense that they are in the front line of the negative impacts of climate change, but they are also affected by unsafeguarded response measures to climate change, including things like CDM and REDD. And I just want to highlight a few experiences of indigenous peoples in Kenya and how we really cannot wait anymore, because for us, every other COP means livelihoods devastated and lives lost. Very recently in Kenya, we have had two experiences. One of them is a forest-dependent community called the Sengwer in the Cherangani Hills. This community have lived in this forest for years on end. It is ancestral land. The forest is there because the community is there. Indeed, where forests are is where indigenous peoples are. And it's ironical that they're evicted in the name of conservation and preparation for REDD, while they have conserved for many years. And this community was evicted, forcefully evicted, their homes burned down, their properties destroyed, with meager compensation and without free, prior, and informed consent for their movement. This is unacceptable if we are looking for genuine global solutions for the problem of climate change. Secondly, is a community based also in Kenya near a place called Naivasha and Arasha community, pastoralist Maasai community, who are evicted to implement a clean development mechanism power generation project, geothermal in Kenya. Lives were lost, livestock were burned in homesteads and homesteads destroyed with no compensation and no free, prior and informed consent. And for us as indigenous peoples who feel are custodians of these ecosystems, we feel like the way the climate change is interventions is designed now is designed for market forces, for market interests, and less for local communities. And the safeguards become priority for us. But we are not only we are not only victims of climate change. As indigenous peoples, we are also part of the solutions. And oftentimes, we may be familiar with the vulnerability of indigenous people, but less of what we contribute to climate change. And one of the things we've done at the community level is demonstrated through research on community-based monitoring information systems to show how community monitor the ecosystems, how they monitor the environment, and how these results of daily monitoring feeds into their way of life. And it is evident from these studies that indigenous peoples, monitoring for them is not a once-off activity. It is a lifestyle of monitoring, and this monitoring informs what they do and how they live. And therefore, we are calling for the recognition of indigenous knowledge in the national forest monitoring systems and the monitoring and review system. So this indigenous knowledge that has contributed to conservation of this ecosystem is useful, especially for monitoring of safeguards, the non-carbon safeguards, the rights to territories of indigenous peoples, and the non-carbon aspect of monitoring which the market may not be interested in. And therefore, we are here to ask the negotiators to really put a human face in the negotiation agenda. Remember that lives are lost as we bargain about technical aspects of climate change, and especially to integrate a human rights-based approach that recognizes the rights of indigenous peoples, indigenous knowledge, full and effective participation of indigenous peoples. And I thank you.
Thank you, Kimaren. I would like to give the floor now to Dennis Mairena from CADPI in Nicaragua. Dennis, you have the floor.
Yo voy a hablar en español. Y dentro de este partnership que tenemos con TEPTEBA, voy a tratar de ilustrar lo que Grace, Kimaren y Mina han explicado y cómo lo hacemos en el terreno propiamente. En el caso de mi nombre es Dennis Mairena, del Centro para la Autonomía y Desarrollo de Pueblos Indígenas, que está ubicado en el noreste de Nicaragua, en la costa caribe de Nicaragua. Hemos tratado de poner en práctica estos conceptos que los compañeros de la Alianza están explicando, en lo cual esos conocimientos tradicionales para la adaptación que los pueblos indígenas han venido haciendo desde siempre, ahora lo queremos sistematizar. Y lo hacemos a través de ese sistema de monitoreo para montar un sistema de información, no propiamente para la comunidad, porque la comunidad, como dije antes, han venido adaptándose desde siempre. Entonces, la idea es que tengamos un sistema de datos, de información, que le podamos proporcionar información a los políticos, a los tomadores de decisiones, para que sepan lo que está pasando a nivel comunitario. ¿Y eso cómo lo hacemos? Primero, tenemos un proceso altamente participativo. Nosotros hemos hecho en 3 comunidades, estamos montando el sistema de información, y allí más de 80 personas durante 15 días en cada lugar participan directamente en recorrer el terreno para traer la información escrita, levantar datos de los límites del territorio, observando los animales que hay dentro del territorio, observando las fuentes de agua, los sitios sagrados, las plantas medicinales, los niños, incluso que los fines de semana acostumbran ir en grupo a divertirse en el bosque, ellos también participan identificando animales, dibujando los animales que ellos miran en el monte. Y toda esa información la hemos recogido. También incluimos áreas de deforestación, áreas de cultivo, presencia de colonos, presencia de invasores. Entonces, toda esa información se trata de recoger y ponerlo ahora en un sistema de digital, en donde los mapas van a servirle a los políticos para saber lo que está pasando y hacer toma de decisiones. Esto lo estamos haciendo como un proyecto piloto y esperamos que a la vuelta de 2 años podamos convencer al gobierno regional y al gobierno nacional para que amplíen este proyecto y se pueda masificar. Porque el sistema, en el caso de Nicaragua, el Sistema Nacional de Información Ambiental ahorita está incompleto. Y está incompleto porque las fuentes de información no vienen desde la comunidad. Entonces lo que queremos es que esa información se incorpore en el Sistema Nacional de Información y allí entonces esté accesible para los tomadores de decisiones. La idea es demostrar, sistematizar lo que tradicionalmente se ha venido haciendo, ese conocimiento tradicional, esa práctica tradicional de saber lo que ha venido pasando y adaptándose, ahora lo vamos a poner en un sistema digital para disponibilidad de todo el mundo. Muchas gracias.
Thank you, Dennis. I would like to give the floor to Tarsila Rivera for a few minutes. Then we can wrap up and have open forum.
Muy buenos días con todas y con todos. Muchas gracias por acompañarnos. Yo soy quechua hablante de Perú, soy de Ayacucho. Y solo quisiera decir o puntualizar algunos aspectos desde el movimiento indígena, desde las mujeres indígenas. Aquí estoy como Chirapas, parte de la Alianza Global, pero también soy coordinadora del Enlace Continental de Mujeres Indígenas que agrupa las 3 Américas. En ese sentido, lo que quisiera es resaltar que el movimiento indígena, los pueblos indígenas, nos hemos preparado desde el año 2007 por regiones para participar en el proceso de las COPs. La primera COP donde hemos tenido una amplia participación ha sido en la COP de Copenhague. Previo a Copenhague hemos realizado reuniones regionales en las 7 regiones del mundo como pueblos indígenas. Luego hemos llegado a una preparatoria indígena que ha sido en Alaska. Luego, con esta propuesta global, hemos llegado a Copenhague. Luego hemos estado participando ya más articuladamente a nivel global, como lo acaban de explicar mis hermanas y mis hermanos, y en este proceso también hemos ido sumando aprendizajes y sumando la claridad en nuestras propuestas. En ese sentido, quisiéramos que el resultado de Lima puede ser un gran avance para que los conocimientos de los pueblos indígenas en relación al bosque, que la dimensión de los derechos humanos por la defensa del agua, los recursos naturales y de la vida del planeta no sean penalizados y que la participación plena y efectiva en el proceso de concesión para la explotación minera o de hidrocarburos a lo largo del mundo puedan tener la participación plena y efectiva de los pueblos indígenas, porque para nosotros
los pueblos indígenas, así como lo han mencionado nuestros hermanos y hermanas, es que invadir el territorio, quitarnos de ese espacio es como quitarnos la vida y quitarnos el techo. Esto no es aceptable desde ningún punto de vista. Garantizamos los alimentos, garantizamos el ambiente sano, garantizamos la vida de los demás. En ese sentido, sí creemos que es justo reconocer esos aportes y que participamos en todo el proceso y que ojalá los resultados nos puedan considerar en ese sentido en la dimensión real de los aportes de los pueblos indígenas. Hay diferentes aspectos, diferentes temas que estamos discutiendo en esta COP. Hay mucho que se está mostrando desde el Perú también como herencia cultural y quisiéramos que esa herencia cultural también esté con los propios actores. Muchísimas gracias y gracias por acompañarnos otra vez.
We have no more time, but we would like to welcome the press to, if they have questions, to ask from the panelists, because we need to wrap up the press conference, so sorry for that. So thank you again for coming to the press conference, and our panelists are available for questions outside. Thank you.